Greetings, Spencer. So this is going to be a review of the cutting sword we got. So this is the Cold Steel Italian Longsword. Now, I can't talk a whole lot about performance. I don't have another cutting longsword to compare it to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why we got it, what does it feel like, some durability and parts of it, and what we've been able to do with it. So I can't compare it to other swords. I can simply show and state what we have been able to do with it for practice. I guess first I will comment on the scabbard. Scabbard is nice. I do really like it. It's got steel on both ends, and it came in tightly before, and if I hold it slowly comes out. So it's not completely tight, but it eventually falls out. Good scabbard, but no attachment points on it. Scabbard, definitely seems high enough quality and good tight fit without being overly tight, but no attachment points, so I'll have to add those if I ever want to carry the sword. So first, getting to what the sword feels like. It is a pretty lightweight sword for something that is more so a two-handed sword. It feels more like a longsword. It is very light, and I can use it in one hand pretty good. Now, I actually have an injury with my right hand, so I can't swing it as fast as I would want to, but I can do everything pretty good. With two hands, it feels very lightweight. The point of balance is only about 2.5 inches. It's really not that far, so it is a light mover. Comparatively, if you've ever used the VB technique feathers, this is one of those. They're more like a blunt. These feel heavier and do not move as fast. So I definitely struggle to move it as fast as the sharp cold steel. But they are pretty much identical length, identical hilt length, and pretty similar blade width. So they are very similar looking swords. The only difference being this one is a relatively thick edge all the way through because it's blunt. I think if the VB was sharpened, it would probably feel pretty similar to this. Starting at one end, the pommel, it's a fishtail pommel. I've given myself quite big bruises where there's been a big red ball on my hand from cutting and then having it clamp down on my pinky or palm. So it's definitely not a comfortable pommel, especially when you're cutting water bottles. Your hands might get wet over time, and then it slides down and it slides onto a sharp or uncomfortable pommel. So definitely not the greatest design. It has not come loose. Looks like it's peened. The grip seam is actually wavy throughout the design. I don't know if that's purposeful or if the leather got pulled and it's just no longer down one line. You definitely feel it and you notice it, but obviously it doesn't bother a hand. And they do have two risers in there. It's at an interesting spot because my pinky goes past it when holding onto the riser, so it's not exactly at a super convenient spot. I don't know exactly what measurement they were going by. If it was just slightly smaller hands or if they want the pinky resting on it. So if you've searched up reviews about this before, there are a couple that I found as well. You'll notice that you'll know that it's pretty common for the crossguards to get loose, especially if you look at just written reviews when people buy the sword. So the crossguard did come tight. However, the first time it got hit against our cutting stand, the crossguard did actually get loose. So it does wobble side to side a tiny bit. It's only like a millimeter. So from what I've seen just throughout written reviews over the sword, I think they have gotten better with their quality control and they're not just coming loose 50% of the time anymore. So generally you're probably going to be pretty safe buying them, but I think it will come loose on hard impacts over time, and this one will probably get maybe a little bit loose, but it's not going up and down, so it's not a huge wobble. So hopefully it doesn't get that bad over time. The blade, I also saw this on reviews. They write, "Oh, it comes super sharp, razor sharp," but whatever. It was sharp enough to cut bottles and stuff, but it was pretty blunt. Like I could put my hands on it and be fine. Even if I slid my hand down it couldn't cut paper at all. If I was holding, a reasonably thick piece of paper, it would barely cut through it. It'd go like an inch and then just start ripping the paper instead of cutting through it. So, and it very quickly got more blunt over time. Only 1 or 2 cutting sessions. So this is sharpened by me again with a belt. So I'm back to a moderate sharpness where I'm pretty confident that I'm not hitting blunt spots on the sword. But I think it does get dull over time quite quickly based on that. So hopefully I don't have to sharpen it, you know, every 2 times to get it back up to a more respectable sharpness. The blunt is quite awkward looking. That's mainly because of me. It actually came with rolled tip, not just the point was rolled over. Likely got damaged at some point where it was being stored, so I had to sand that off at a point and file that down. Even with the rolled tip, I was still able to thrust through bottles and everything, so it was still fine, but eventually once I sharpened the blade, I sharpened the tip as well. And so you might be wondering, well, why did I get this sword? Why did I choose this this as my cutting sword? There's lots of other, you know, high-end cutting swords, ones that aren't, you know, the mass-produced common ones. Because I actually ended up finding this one in Canada for only like $320. So that definitely was the cheapest cutting sword I'd seen. Usually they'd be more like $350 US minimum, which is going to be like $450, $500 Canadian. So this was insanely cheap for Canada. So I am happy with the purchase. It is a cutting sword that gets you into being able to cut bottles quite effortlessly and for a fraction of the price as many others. If you have the money, you know, go and buy a nicer cutting sword. But if you really don't care that much, you can get something like this if you find it quite cheap. It's not a heavy blade that's just a chopper that I've seen some other cold steel blades commented as. This definitely feels like a light sword that can move around easily, which is nice. That's definitely something that I wanted. I didn't want a heavy bladed sword. So this is the cold steel Italian longsword. Thanks for watching. Keep studying, keep practicing. Dog came barking at the door.